This is our Turkish guide, Nurullah. So thanks for being with us, Nurullah.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. I already said it. It's a privilege and an honor, really, to be a part of what you're doing. And I've been following you for years, Wes, and I've been translating some of your works. They have been very helpful and really incredible resources for the Turkish church to have as well. And now I met you in person and Andy as well, and I take part in this awesome project, Can I Trust the Bible series?
Yeah.
And I'm able to show you around. That's so cool, and I'm so happy.
Yeah.
My name is Nurullah, and its meaning is the light of God, the light of Allah. So, and their delight is like divine light in Arabic. And sometimes that, like, for people is really strange when they hear that I'm a Christian, and they're like, wait, like, your name is Nurullah, it has like the word Allah in it as well. So how can you be a Christian? Like, is it even possible for Christians to use the word Allah? And when I was a Muslim, I was a Muslim because I was born in a Muslim country, born in a Muslim family, but I was like trying to practice it. I was trying to be a faithful Muslim, but I did not decide that for myself. So in my like faith journey, I realized at some point that if I'm gonna believe in something, I need to believe what I know to be true, not just what I've been told as true. So because I did that, and in my faith journey, that's how I came to Christ, I am so like convinced and I'm so certain that what I believe is true. So, and I know that like this life is, I always say that like this life is temporary and I have this eternal life to look forward to. So whatever can or is gonna happen in this life, because I know what I believe is true, does not matter. Because I know that I have eternal life in Jesus, whatever happens here, like Paul also says, right? That has been like a great encouragement for me when I read those verses.
Well, I guess it's fitting that we're here, right? We're, after the Apostle Paul, are near where the Apostle Paul had been imprisoned, and many others. I mean, Paul wrote his letter to the Ephesians from prison, and we have his prison epistles, right? So yeah, there is like that tradition, right, of persecution.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first time I actually watched a documentary on life of Paul, I was so touched because I saw kind of myself in him. I'm not trying to, of course, like elevate myself to his level, but in the sense that I actually, when I was a Muslim kid, I was so devout and I was so like radical in ways that I still have up to this day. I haven't deleted them. On Facebook, I have messages that I wrote to Christians abroad. I was also trying to improve my English through chatting with foreigners online. So I have chats that I was telling them, you will go to hell. You have to believe in like Islam. You have to become a Muslim if you want to be saved. So I had like this kind of like...
We should talk about that. You weren't just a Muslim. You were a devout Muslim. I mean, you told us that you had memorized half of the Quran.
Yes.
And
I was on my way to actually memorizing the whole of the Quran, and my brother now, for example, has done that. And my dad was proud of me because I was on the way too. So for him, it was devastating. Like those are maybe like some other details we can talk another time. But yeah, so when I was a Muslim kid, yeah, because of my dad and how he raised us, I was raised in a household where we did not only practice it, but we were trying to understand what we believed in. And that pushed me, even as a Muslim kid, I wanted to like believe in the true religion, or the true way of being a Muslim, right? So that definitely pushed me like to also kind of talk to people about like Islam, try to convert them to Islam as well. Like I had that motivation at some point too. And so like I was even in some ways like I have cursed some of those people online, like those Christians eventually when they kept refusing to become a Muslim. So that was the way that I felt related to Paul as well, that I'm like, because he started persecuting Christians and then after his encounter with Jesus, he became a believer. So yeah, for me, like these kind of like stories and parallels, they play a huge part in my testimony and in my faith journey.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, especially for the listeners, to hear that you were a very zealous Muslim adherer, and your family still very much is.
Yeah.
And so in one sense, you have this outward ministry to a lot of other people, but you're also, in your choice to follow Christ, you're relating to the people you grew up with who would have seen this radical shift. this might be a question that, you know, may be personal, but like, how do you think they perceive that kind of 180 that you took? And are you able to express that in any open way to your brother, your father?
Yeah, so there are like interesting elements when we talk about that, because one is people, because they know my background, they're so shocked. They're like, you knew all about Islam, you knew all those things, and yet in the end, you became a Christian. How so? Because they think, and they don't know much about Christianity, but they somewhat know about their belief, like Islam, and they're practicing it. They're also very kind of like religious. So they think that if someone really knows about Islam, that they would never want to leave Islam. They would always want to be Muslims. But so, and how I encountered that is when I read and when I learned about the life of Jesus and his gospel and who he is and what he taught and what he said about himself and what he said he came to do and that he did.
Yeah.
So those things are really, really big things that, like, when you study and when you understand that they're not only also stuff that like you are to just believe, like with a blind faith,
Right.
but like they're even backed up by like some historical evidence, for example, for about his crucifixion, right, and about his life as well. We have like strong evidence for all that. That to me was like irresistible, maybe is the word that I want to use here. That's how I try to tell people that, like, yeah, I see it as shocking to you, but that's exactly what I actually think you need to do as well.
Wow.
And because of that, actually, my brother did not even want to discuss religion with me for some time. Now he's a bit older. He's studying Islamic theology at university as well. But at first he was like, sometimes you say stuff because you know Islam and you know Christianity so well, you say stuff that I put my head in my pillow at night and I think about it and I get scared that I'm going to become Christian too. And
Heaven forbid.
for him, yeah, absolutely. He thinks that. And some of my friends said the same thing. And I'm like, if you believe that what you believe is the truth, you shouldn't be scared to hear from the other side, like from other sides and from me, from someone else who believes in another thing.
Right.
Like, you need to have that kind of confidence and that kind of like certainty. So if you are thinking that because of what I'm gonna say to you, you might lose your faith, I think maybe your faith in the first place is something that you need to think more about. So that's how I also kind of respond to that.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about faith. From a Muslim perspective, before becoming a Christian, and just how Muslims in general would think, what do they think about Christians and Christianity in general?
Oh, that's a great question, because in Turkey, as I said, like, because people assume that it came from the West, they also look to the West for Christian lifestyle, and especially like Hollywood movies. When I first became a Christian, some of my friends said, oh yeah, Islam was so difficult to practice, so you switch to Christianity, which is easier because you're allowed to have like free sex, free alcohol, everything is free, no sin, like, you know, we see in these Hollywood movies. So like you wanted to become that. I'm like, have you read Jesus's words? And then I usually bring up like the verse about adultery that Jesus says, like, it's not even like you do it, but even if you look at a woman and you think about doing it, it is a sin. And so like, it is not easy. Like in that regard, like, it's not easy to be a Christian. It's not any easier than being a Muslim. And so people look up to those kind of like Hollywood movies and like the Western lifestyle that even now, like, we disagree with, right? Like when we see like how people are living, and most of those people are not even like they do not identify themselves as Christians either. But people have this idea. My dad, for example, that was the only thing that he had, and it was only until
What do you mean the only thing that he had?
like these
perception.
Hollywood
This
this perception.
Yeah.
It was only until after that he met actual Christians that he realized, oh, wait a minute, these Christians are actually not bad people. Because at first that was also the thing that scared him about me becoming a Christian, because he thought I was lost. I was gonna become something very bad, something that he wouldn't want for me. But so this is I think just this would fit right here, that I brought an Amish family to my household
Okay,
for
so
my family to meet.
how did you bring an Amish family to your household in Turkey? Like that needs a little bit of backstory.
Yeah, so they were from Kentucky. They came to Gaziantep to serve the refugees there.
Oh,
And so I invited them for dinner. And for my family, because I'm able to speak English fluently, it is something that they can take pride in. They're like, wow, look at him, like he speaks 2 languages. So I'm like, I will bring some foreigners for dinner and I want you to introduce them to the Turkish culture, to Turkish food. My mom makes amazing food. So they were like, sure, bring them in. And they were this Amish family, so they had already 2 kids. The woman was pregnant. And they're like more traditional,
Yeah.
and the woman even wears like a scarf.
okay.
And so I heard that they don't believe in birth control and stuff like that. But so what happened is I brought them and my dad started speaking with him and I'm translating. And then after his conversation, like 30 minutes into his conversation with him, he turned to me and asked, are you sure these people are Christians? Because I agree with this guy about so much, like about like moral stuff, like about marriage, about like family. And he's like, so Christians are like, are not like what I knew about, like in those,
Or envisioned.
yeah, what he just maybe heard from others as well. And so these kind of like actual experiences, and it wasn't just the Amish family, but I actually brought a lot of Christians, especially foreigners, to my house for dinner. And the more he interacted with them, the more he came to realize, and his perception about Christians changed. And unfortunately, like in Turkey, some people lack that, and so they just assume what Christianity and who Christians about. So
What would you say though is one of the biggest challenges that you face in the ministry you're doing here?
yeah, it is so. For me and for I think the Turkish Christians, it always feels like it is also a different culture when you become a Christian. So it's almost a bit like people think that we abandon our like whole culture and identity of like being a Turk. And so that is a misconception. And people even like tell me sometimes or like comment on my videos, they're like, a Turk cannot be a Christian. And I'm like, wait a minute, like being a Turk has not anything to do with like being a Christian, because one is about your ethnicity and the other is your faith, so but of course obviously like when you are a Christian, you assume some different like cultures, and that culture I don't mean like the Western culture, but the Christian culture that we can trace back to Jesus and what he taught and how he wanted us to live, right? For example, loving your enemies is something that we do not have in our culture. And
In Turkish culture?
in Turkish culture, and also in like as a Muslim kid, that will like be something that I could not accept at all if you told me like to love my enemies.
Another question for you. I'm wondering, when you became a Christian, what was one of the biggest challenges to from going from practicing Islam to practicing Christianity? What was one of the biggest challenges?
Yeah, so for me, it was obviously with my family, especially my dad, because for him, like now, I think as I'm older and as I can relate to his experience more, although like the stuff that happened between us was very sad and he did a lot of things wrong. Even I, like, despite the fact that I became a Christian, until I actually spiritually matured, I also kept making mistakes. Even like kind of, because I was so convinced that I found the truth for myself, I sometimes like kind of, I use this term, like slap them in the face with that fact that their boy is gone now. Their boy has gone to a different path. Right. And so we had a lot of issues. My dad initially kicked me out of the house. So that was very difficult. And we had so many fights. But again, like through time, with, not to take credit for myself, but with really the transformation and with the
God at work in your life?
yeah, exactly, and with the positive changes in my character and in my life, my dad was able to see that, and that has also transformed his heart. So I always say this: if you right now. My relationship with my dad is so good. He's
glad to
one of
hear
my
that.
fans. He's constantly watching my videos.
Really?
Yeah, praises them. He shares it with his friends. He tells them to watch as well. Because in the past for him, it was also difficult. The people outside would always also pressure him. He's like, look at what your son has become. Like, how are you accepting this? So he would also kind of like because of that social pressure as well, he will react more aggressively. But now that he sees me, and now that we have this relationship, and he's like, he embraced it. Although he still thinks I'm lost, he still disagrees with my decision. He still hopes and prays probably for me to become Muslim again. But he sometimes comes, he's like, I miss you, I miss talking to you, let's talk. And we talk for hours. Sometimes he asks me questions about the Bible, about Paul, about what I've been working on. And on Sundays, for example, when he's not working, he watches like Christian content online as well. So he became that. So I always say, if you told me 10 years ago that my dad would be the person that he is today, I would have said absolutely no.
Wow.
But with my dad, what I've seen is that how God can transform like hearts and lives. And it doesn't have to be like just like, oh, he becomes a Christian too. No, like it has been like more than 10 years now, and he's still not a Christian. But from that to that, that gives me hope that maybe in the next 10 years, because now if you ask me, I would say impossible. But in the next 10 years, maybe it will be like something like this. And so I'm praying for my whole family, and that although that was the most challenging part about my story, I think it turned out to be also the most rewarding now fruits of my faith journey, I would say.
I love that. Well, I want to thank you, Nurullah, for being a part of the Apologetics Canada podcast. It's been great to have you with us. I do want to say, if anybody wants to get in touch with him, you can reach out to info@Apologetics Canada, and we could help get you connected. But where could people learn more about the work you're doing, or could see some of the videos you're doing? I know they're in Turkish, I'm sure.
Yeah, so that's the thing though. So I used to, because I started during the pandemic, I had the time to add subtitles, English subtitles into my videos. So some of them, especially the earlier ones, actually have English subtitles for those who are interested. And even the recent ones, when I find the time, I try to add English subtitles. But I do videos on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. So I'm active on like all social media platforms. And it's called Türkiye'de bir Hristiyan, and that would translate to a Christian in Turkey.